Okay, so the time is now 5:06. We're going to go ahead and get started because we have a lot of ground to cover, and we'll just continue to keep letting people in the meeting as they join. But we're going to get started in the interest of time. This is a subcommittee meeting of the Public Safety Committee of the Springfield City Council. I am your chairman, Councilor Orlando Ramos. I am joined by committee member Councilor Tracy Whitfield, as well as City Council members Councilor Letterman and Councilor Edwards. There is one item on the agenda this evening, which is the discussion of a one-year review of police reform. Today is the one-year anniversary, as we all know, of the release of the Department of Justice report, which was released on July 8th, 2020. And it detailed a lot of disturbing trends, as we know, related to the Springfield Police Department's narcotics unit. We have with us this evening Commissioner Clapprood and Attorney Picula. And I see that there's a third member of your team. If you, and I'll allow you to introduce your team as well. Thank you for joining us. Your presence here is greatly appreciated, and I look forward to a lively and important conversation as to how we can work together. So I will turn it over to you just for an introduction of your team, and we'll get right into our agenda. Commissioner.
Hi, Councilor. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you this evening. With me also is Judy Crowell. She is currently working on certifying and updating all the policies and procedures of the police department, and sometimes to really explain where we're at with that arduous process, I need her right here. She can explain it best of all. So whenever, and you know, Attorney Picula.
Thank you. And my apologies, Judy. So it's your official title, accreditation officer, is that correct?
That's correct. Accreditation manager.
Accreditation manager. Thank you for joining us. And my apologies for not recognizing you. So again, thank you for joining us. This is again the purpose of today is to discuss the one-year review of the Springfield Police Department's police reform and efforts. As you all know, the Springfield City Council stood on the steps of City Hall on June 9th, 2020, following the George Floyd incident. We made four very specific recommendations related to the use of force policy for the Springfield Police Department. I reviewed the use of force policy that was in place at the time, and did some research as to best practices and compared it to our policy. And together with my team, my fellow counselors and colleagues, we put together four very specific recommendations and recommended changes for the use of force policy. So I would like to start off with addressing each of those one by one. And Commissioner, I sent you a copy of that letter just as a reminder yesterday. So we'll get right to it. The first recommended change from the Springfield Police, from the Springfield City Council to the Springfield Police Department, was a ban on chokeholds. Chokehold, and I'll read it to you. Chokeholds and carotid restraints shall be explicitly banned under the department's use of force policy. Has that been fully implemented?
Well, let me start by explaining just a couple of things, Councilor, and I will tell you that I read your letter and I took your recommendations very seriously, and I applied what I could apply, and there are some things that are still very fluid. As you know, we are still in negotiations with the DOJ on a settlement, on an agreement, and that is still continuing, and there are things that we are working on that I am not at liberty to discuss because of confidentiality. We have worked so hard and come so close to what I think, and you can check with Attorney Picula, but I think we're looking at a settlement in September. So I don't want to jeopardize that. We've spent too many hundreds of hours in dealing with them and trying to negotiate with them. So that is out there. Also out there is the Springfield Police Department. As you know, I cannot implement or teach our own use of force policy. What the Springfield Police Department must teach and must abide by is the Mass Police Training Council. They are the ones that set the standards for the use of force, and that is currently being looked at again too. So, and as you know, the reform bill is going to influence any use of force. So that's in flux. So what I did based on your recommendations in January, a new use of force policy did come out and address chokeholds. I was in agreement with the wording, and the wording is in regards to chokehold is the use of a lateral vascular neck restraint, carotid restraint, or other action that involves the placement of any part of any officer's body on or around a person's neck with the intent to limit a person's breathing or blood flow. The Springfield Police Department does not train its officers in the use of chokeholds. Chokeholds are prohibited unless lethal force is justified and no other reasonable force alternative exists. The language currently is in compliance with the MPTC strict training and their use of force policy. But as I said, they are reviewing it also now. So that may get more restrictive for us. I don't know. I like the language because to ban chokeholds outright would be to tell an officer in a life or death situation, you cannot use it. I like the wording that says they're prohibited unless lethal force is justified and no other reasonable force alternative exists. Again, may MPTC be more restrictive on me shortly with that? Yes, this is a very fluid policy. May the reform bill be more restrictive than that wording with me? Yes, it may. So as it stands right now, that's what was taught, that's what was explained to officers in January of 2021 to the current time. But again, that could change.
So the language that you just read, that is the language that is in the new use of force policy?
Yes.
And when did the Springfield Police Department's use of force policy update?
This took effect January 22nd, 2021.
Because we were waiting for the reform bill, which was passed on December 31st.
Okay, so I wasn't aware of that. And I know that this committee has requested that information previously, but I appreciate you bringing that to our attention now.
I apologize, but I tell you, everything has been in a state of very fluid flux for me and can change at any given time when the reform bill, you know, enacts the committees that they were supposed to enact, or they're running a little bit behind.
That's right.
And I know Mass Police Training Council is also, we were told they were taking a look at the use of force policy. So, but that's what we have been teaching our officers since January 22nd, 2021 in regards to chokehold.
Okay. So in my review, or my 8-page report that we submitted, it was mentioned that there was a study that was conducted by, I'm trying to look for it now.
Perth, Los Angeles?
The LA case or the study conducted by Perth?
It was that, I believe it was the
LA versus Lyons, the case you cited?
Yeah, and it mentioned that there were several police departments that have actually listed, or that it was actually a recommendation of this report that use of force be categorized as deadly force and not under any other, chokeholds will be considered deadly force.
Yes, and that's what that language says, prohibited unless lethal force, which is deadly force, is offered. And that's what the language states.
Yeah, so it was cooperative controls. Yeah, so it would be under 1993 study conducted by Anthony Pat and Laurie Fidel for the Police Foundation, Washington, D.C. categorized karate restraints under deadly force alongside firearms.
Right.
Yep. Okay. So the answer to the conclusion to that question is yes.
Yes.
To my original question as to whether or not that's been fully implemented.
Yes. Yes. The answer to your concerns, I believe, is yes. We did. We adopted that strong language, and it does put it in a lethal force category, and it does specifically explain where no other reasonable force alternative exists. So you're going to fight for your life, and that's the only thing you can do, then that's the only thing you can do. That's where it sits now. That's where the officers were trained. And again, that it may change, it may not. The MPTC may like that language and keep that right in there, and that's what I'm hoping.
All right, so thank you for that. We're making a little bit of progress here. Again, it would have been appreciated if we had that information when we inquired about it back in December, January. Would have been a lot more helpful for us working together, but thank you for bringing that to our attention. The second recommendation that was made by the Springfield City Council was de-escalation. And as it reads, de-escalation shall be listed as the first option in all 5 levels of force in the policy. Has that been fully implemented?
The new use of force policy states officers shall use that amount of force that is proportionable, reasonable, and necessary under the circumstances to protect themselves and or others while performing their lawful duties. When feasible and practical, officers shall attempt to de-escalate potential use of force situations with non-physical force alternatives, such as direction, persuasion, or verbal warning, or time or distance tactics prior to resorting to the use of force. That is language that we inserted specifically in the January use of force policy. It was taught before that. De-escalation was listed as a first course of action in all of our levels of use of force for the last 2 years. But we specifically, based on your recommendation, put in the wording, and that's how they are taught. And along with the de-escalation and the verbal judo, we now also add such teaching as time and distance tactics, which are part of the de-escalation training. So yes, in answer to that question, we did include that in the language of the use of force.
Beautiful. 2 for 2 so far. We're pretty good.
Can we quit now?
The third recommendation that was made by the Springfield City Council was Springfield Police Department shall create a tracking system for citizens' complaints and expedite the implementation of an early intervention system to help identify, intervene, and if necessary, retrain potential problematic officers. This was also a recommendation of the 2019 PERF report. Additionally, complaints must be added retroactively to help identify officers currently in need of intervention. Has this been fully implemented?
Yes, Counselor, it has. And what I did was I put in a captain of the Academy and Training over at and the IIU captain. And together they work now with keeping track of records and issues in regards to IIU. So the IIU records come to me whenever an officer is complained about, and I do it manually right now, where I look back at the officer's IIU record to see how many complaints that officer has received. Or is it rudeness? Is it yelling at people or non-involvement? So I do that. We are in the current process with the city's financial CFO, TJ Plant. I have identified a software called IA Pro and Blue Team. Blue Team and IA Pro have an early warning intervention system built in That is going to help us tremendously. Instead of me doing it manually to see who's got what problems, IA Pro and Blue Team do it electronically for me. They're going to generate a report that tells me how many complaints this officer has, what kind of complaints they were, and what were the dispositions. They also improve the IIU functioning and the reporting mechanisms. Part of our problem that we went through with DOJ and with PERF was not that we weren't doing the reports, but they were difficult to find. They were very difficult to locate because for some reason, they went in different directions. Use of force reports went one way, use of the mace report went one way, use of a stick report went one way, and they were in different locations. If they couldn't find them, they didn't think we did them. IA Pro and Blue Team keep them all in the same place, and they attach them to the report. I ran this by TJ Plant, and it's doable for us. I have the prices, the quotes. I sent an officer to Providence, Rhode Island. They use the system.
Yes.
And they are very happy with it. It does what I think will satisfy some of my DOJ issues. It does what I think will help me with the police reform bill. And I think it does what I think you are concerned about.
Okay. Now it was, the PERF report was very specific in terms of how to insert that data into the database. So it sounds like that was.
It says something about map software, the PERF report.
Okay, yeah. I think that's what it was. And so is that part of it as well?
It will be part of it.
Yes.
Our current system right now that we use is unable to do that. So the IMC system we use is going to be replaced, but I've been waiting for the new records management system. It's called RMS. It's taking too long for me. I gotta do something a little bit quicker than what the RMS system is requiring. So that's why I'm looking at IA Pro and Blue Team, and that's why I think I can launch this much quicker. That will do that for us. And like I said, we do it manually now. I've had all the records transferred over to the training in the academy next to the IIU so that I can quickly get my hands on them. Captain Kane is coming up with some different ways of filing and electronic ways of keeping records, because once this reform bill hits, I'm sure you know, the reform bill is going to require me to send every citizen's complaint against every officer to the post commission. So everything will have to be tracked. Everything will have to be sent from Springfield Police to the post commission. So I have to have an electronic filing system and way of keeping track to know exactly what's going on with what officer. So that's why I'm looking at IA Pro and the Blue Team to get it up a little bit faster. Involved in the record management system are too many agencies, too many hands in the pot. They're taking too long. The fire department is in there. The AMR system is in there. COVID hit, and they've been having a hard time with setting up a place to display the different systems. So we've been having too long. So I'm trying to get the CFO to go ahead and give me permission to get this IA Pro Blue Team software, and then I can get it up and running electronically. So yes, it would take care of your concerns with that.
Okay. What about the second part of my question in terms of retroactively adding complaints?
That's where Council, that's where Captain Kane comes in, and his civilian clerk can add into IA Pro everything passed with every current officer. I won't go into officers who are no longer employed, but everybody who is still employed, I will go back in their IIU file.
Okay, great. So it sounds like we're 3 for 3 so far, or at least on our way to fully implementing number 3.
Yes.
Okay.
Currently, he's going to try to, when he gets his clerk, he's going to have it so that the clerk will start going back, inserting all of the data and the information into like an Access database or an Excel spreadsheet, so that we can at least have a CDS file or an Excel file. So when we do implement IA Pro, we'll be able to transfer everything from the database or the Excel file into the new software. So that's the plan right now.
Sounds great. Appreciate that. Thank you. And the fourth recommendation that was made on July 9th of June 9th of 2020 by the Springfield City Council was related to the citizens complaint form. The recommendation was to begin accepting complaints by phone and online and expand the information provided to residents as to the process used to address citizens' complaints and what possible outcomes there are. This was also a recommendation of the 2017 Police Community Relations Committee. Has that been fully implemented?
Yes, Councilor, that's in place. We are now online with our citizens complaint in English and Spanish. We are also in print for Vietnamese and Russian, and we can do other languages. We've teamed up with UMass, so if there's another language we need, we can quickly get that into our citizens complaint form. We came out with the new IIU policy, and that's just pending. Actually, the only thing holding back the new IIU policy, which states specifically that no officer shall discourage, or rather encourage any complaints on an officer to be filed against them. And I think the only thing holding that back is we had to add in language that addresses the new reform bill, because that just came out as regards to they want complaints against every officer. So Captain Murphy did just do that. They did departmental notifications to Mass Division of Police Standards for any complaint that comes into the Springfield Police Department. Once that is done, and once the DOJ is settled in agreement, I will run this by the law department, and that'll be part of the IIU policy. It actually discourages and punishes anyone who discourages anyone from making a citizen's complaint form. But it is currently online. You can make it by phone. There are phone numbers available. The website is coming out that's brand new. Currently, we are on the city website. We're going to have a new Springfield Police Department website, and then everything will be explained on that, where you can call, you can file, and you can go to 299 Page Boulevard, where it has private parking and a better office where you can speak with IIU. So I think we have that one as best we can at this time also.
Now, the second part of that, in terms of expectations for anyone who files a complaint, is there some sort of a summary for people to know, what happens once they file a complaint?
Yeah, and the new, I'm sorry, I didn't go on to that. The new IIU policy tells them that they have a certain amount of time to notify the complainant that it's being investigated, and to notify the complainant of the results of the investigation, and to give them a number to call if they have more information. Again, I think the only thing holding that IIU, and Ed, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is a review by the law department after the reform bill. We know they want every complaint on an officer. They just don't know where to tell us to send it yet. So as soon as they do that, and we know where to send these complaints, well, we will do that and comply with the reform bill. And then the law department can approve the new IIU policy.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like we're making progress on number 4. Appreciate that. What I wanted to do is I wanted to discuss those 4 recommendations first, and then get to the 4 recommendations from the Department of Justice report. So we'll do that next. However, I wanted to open it up to questions from the council and anything related to the department's use of force policy or anything that we've heard so far. Again, if you have questions related to the DOJ report, we'll address that next. But in the interest of time, I know that Council Whitfield has to go. So we'll start with Council Whitfield if she has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, but I did reschedule my other meeting so that I could stay.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to ask a question about the incident reports. The current process, how do they get to the Community Police Hearing Board currently?
Well, the investigation process itself, Counselor, it depends on the complaint. So the rudeness complaints, I got a ticket and I didn't like the officer's attitudes complaints, they get disseminated as PIs, which are preliminary investigations, which are done by the supervisor of the employee. So if that complaint is investigated The supervisor then has to answer what he found, how did that go? The deputy chief in charge answers to that, and then I write an answer to that. It's reviewed by the captain of the IIU to make sure it's thoroughly investigated. And that might not be, they can review it, the CPHB can take a look at it, they can take a look at anything. It probably will not go to a hearing unless all of us are in agreement that that officer violated a policy or procedure and will go to a hearing. The special orders, which are a little bit more in-depth of an IIU investigation for a little bit more serious of a violation of policy or procedure rules, that goes to the commanding officer for review, the deputy for review, then the CPHB for review. And they're the ones that review that case. And if they recommend a hearing and they find violations, it goes right to them for the hearing.
And you have the opportunity to either accept their decision or decline their decision?
Yes, ma'am, yes, I can accept their decision or decline their decision, and I have never declined their recommendation. Whatever they recommended, I have never gone against that.
Okay, and then I got another question. It's about the police reform. You said in the news, in the paper, that a lot of officers are retiring because of the police reform. Can you tell me specifically which law that is causing them to want to leave the police force?
I think if you read that article, I don't say that. They use that as a title on the article, and then you read the article and it's not in there of me saying that. I remember I was quoted as saying it's not just anti-police rhetoric and reform bills and the dangerousness of the job. I said there's a lot of reasons why officers are retiring earlier than what they ever had before. So it's not just the reform bill. Officers are concerned about being decertified for a split-second decision they make in regards to the reform bill and then not being able to be a police officer. That's concerning to them, and they don't really understand the certification, decertification process. They have family and relatives who are telling them that it's not worth it, get out of there. The job itself is getting more dangerous, and as guns are very much more visible and gun violence is up. I'm hearing on my exit interviews that they are worried about getting hurt. Their families are worried about them, and they're getting a little bit of, the families are on them to retire earlier. So I have lost people that aren't even staying for the 80%. I have lost officers because they are going into different fields. I think I have 2 or 3 who have taken the fire exam and did very well. So I probably will lose them to the fire department. And that's not just the reform bill. It's partly the reform bill. It's partly under misunderstandings of what's going on. It's partly the dangers of the job and the society that we live in. There's a lot of reasons. But for those reasons, there's definitely a crisis brewing here. There are many more people leaving than people that want to be police officers. We gave the test a couple weeks ago, and the test usually drew 1,200 people. It drew less, about 280 people. 280 people took the test, which is concerning. I mean, I would like to visit recruiting and how do I build up this job? I want good people. I need good people. We need police officers. So there's a lot of reasons, but that was the headline in that article. And then if you read the article, that's not what I said.
I mean, I read portions of the article. I'm not gonna say I read the whole thing, but I just wanted to say that maybe one recruitment method would be to, like you said, change the narrative. We got to try to embrace the changes that's coming down the pike instead of saying, well, officers, and everything that I said too was not placed in the article, and they just picked out some pieces, and I'm going to let them know that they always try to pick out what sounds negative or what sounds combative to you, but that's not even what I said. They picked out some things that that they didn't tell the whole story of what I said. All I said that I think that change comes from the top. We need change agents, and we just got to try to embrace the change and things like that. Because what was told to me prior to the article even coming out is that you said cops are retiring because of the reform bill. And so media portrays things the way they want to portray things, and I don't think that it's always right to do it that way. But we do have to figure out a way to be change agents and embrace the change that's coming, because it's not going away. And then, like you said, figure out how we're going to recruit new officers into the police force. And so it's a tough thing to do because of the climate of what's said about officers. I also said that, probably 5% or less of the police department are the officers that do these crimes, and the whole department takes the brunt of it. And so I did want to clarify that. And I see that Western Mass News is on here because I think that some of the important things that are said in our interviews are sometimes left out. And so, we do have to figure out a way to recruit. It's just the nature of the beast.
I agree. And with the younger officers that come on, they don't know any other way to do things than the way they're taught in the academy. So they're adjusting well to the reform bill. They're adjusting well to changes in policies and procedures. They only tell me that they're getting it from their friends and family and neighbors about how dangerous the job is, or why do you want to be a cop right now? That's what they're hearing. So our message to them is be proud of what you are. And that's what I need help with, is getting out into the schools, the high schools and the colleges here in Springfield, and saying, it's an honorable job. I need good people. You know what? So let's go and let's help your community. There's no better way. It's dangerous. It's always been dangerous, but I need good officers. And I have taken those steps disciplinary wise. I have terminated 7 officers. I have suspended multiple officers for long periods of time, and demand a good police department, because I'll be dipped, as hard as we're working now to make it good. I don't want a setback. I want to go forward. I want to recruit good people for this department.
Definitely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Final comment is we definitely want to recruit good people, and those that want to be police officers, we want to encourage them to move forward with their dream and their goal, and don't let what may be portrayed elsewhere discourage them from following their dreams and their paths, because we do need good officers. And we also need officers from the community, because they are invested, and they that's their neighbors, their families, their friends, and they can understand. And that's why I love community policing, because it just gives you a sense of community, and it builds that camaraderie, and allows us to work together better. So that's my final comment.
I agree. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Councilor. Do any of the other councilors, before we move on to the Department of Justice report, does any of the other councilors have questions related to the police department's use of force policy? All right, seeing none. Thank you again, Councilor. Let's so on July 8th in 2021, the Department of Justice released a 27-page report detailing some of the shortcomings of the, for lack of a better word, of the police department's narcotics unit. In that report, at the conclusion of that report, they had 4 very specific recommendations. The following day, I sent a letter as chairman of public safety, also encouraging the police department to implement the 4 recommendations in that report. And I'd like to go through them one by one. So number 1 was enhancing force reporting and review procedures. SPD should implement a use of force reporting procedure that, number 1, requires officers to report all uses of force, including hands-on uses of force that do not result in injury, and uses of force that do not occur with an arrestee. And number 2, instruct supervisors on how to review uses of force and implement disciplinary action when necessary. Officers and supervisors should receive comprehensive training on the new reporting and review procedures. I know that you touched on it, Commissioner, but just so that we're clear, has this been fully implemented?
I'm going to answer that, Counselor, if we will, because as you stated, this gets into the 4 areas listed in the DOJ report. What I can report is that we have been in active, and we continue in active negotiations with DOJ. I can tell you we have meetings 2 to 3 times a month. I can tell you that we exchange drafts back and forth, and without violating any sort of confidentiality provisions, I can tell you that all 4 of these items are included in those drafts and are covered. I can tell you that we have policies going back and forth that we've shared, and that but before any final approvals will be given, they are going to have to be thoroughly reviewed and approved by DOJ. Now, that will be a process in and of itself, and will end up as part of any settlement agreement. As I said, it's not something that I want to get into. I can refer you to the training council at the state level and what's going on there. And that really is the expertise of Ms. Crowell and her job and what she's doing. But insofar as they regard the DOJ report, regretfully, I cannot openly discuss all of the back and forth. And as the commissioner indicated, it is a moving target, not only as to our ongoing negotiations, but because of the changes that the post commission is contemplating. And again, those regulations are not anything that have been fully implemented yet. So we're not going to be able to do that. But that's being taken account into the negotiations that are ongoing. You might remember that the DOJ report acknowledged that SPD and the city had shown a great cooperation during the investigation, and that they remarked favorably on the reform efforts that SPD had already undertaken. I'm not sure how much of this was public, but they were extremely satisfied with our body-worn camera implementation, and I think that everyone has probably seen the recent video where just great restraint was evidenced by the officers chasing a very dangerous suspect with a lot at risk, a lot at stake, and I think that shows the fact that our training is working, that the attitudes that our officers have are more than appropriate, that they've incorporated the whole spirit of everything we're working for. I want to tell you that there's really the next phases. I think the commissioners alluded, we're in the home stretch with DOJ. We've got a lot of the nuts and bolts done, and we're working to get it finalized. I would only be guessing if I gave you a date, but I can give you some estimated, and educated, a little bit speculative, but I would expect we will have a finished product by mid-September. What we're doing, our internal team that meets is law department and police department and various experts in the field. What we're starting to get into now is going to require sort of the financial implications. We're very concerned about that. We want to work towards that. And so most recently, our meetings have also included our Chief Administration and Finance Officer, Mr. Plant, and some members from his team. And so we're now at the point where, as we get into that phase, we're going to be needing to go to the council, and we're going to have to, as we gather estimates of costs and come forward with some appropriation orders, and that will be a phased process. But you know, I think phase one is managing the risks of liability, and if I could, I respectfully, I would request that we have an executive session in the next 2 weeks where we can actually put some numbers together and strategy for getting some of these matters resolved. We have been working very hard. I think that what we're looking to do, the reforms effectuated in accordance with the DOJ agreement and the other reform efforts, that previously mentioned, I think shows that we're not deliberately indifferent to the civil rights of our inhabitants. And that's the standard that applies in these Monell claims. And that's where we've got to turn the page on that. We need to move forward with a clean slate. We need to be able to, once we have a DOJ settlement that's all in place, we need to be able to use that to help shield us from future lawsuits. And we need to put some of these ones that are lingering behind us, and resolution of those lawsuits and claims, will help us usher in a new era of policing policies and procedures that will be industry standard and for constitutional and effective policing. If I may, I would request that we have an executive session in the next 2 weeks.
So as you were speaking, I was thinking the same thing, because my intent was to go into the full recommendations under the DOJ report. I'm assuming I'm going to get the same answer for each of those. And so it is an important topic that I would like to discuss with my committee. And so if the executive session is our only option, then I'll definitely talk to Council President Williams about scheduling that over the next 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So in terms of the Department of Justice report, I guess we'll wait until the executive session to discuss that. I typically try to keep these meetings within an hour, just to be respectful of everyone's time. I did have some questions related to the DOJ report that I don't think would conflict with what we just agreed on. I actually have questions about what has resulted since. And so I'm wondering if there was any internal investigations that resulted as a result of the DOJ report. Were any officers investigated because of that?
So can I speak to that too?
Yeah.
If you read the report, it lists a lot of incidents. Some of them are just very general, and you really can't tell. It'll say, we saw reports where, and there's no dates, there's no times, there's no specifics. Others are very obvious that they're talking about, say, the incidents in Palmer that have been publicized back in from 2015, the incidents that occurred at the Nathan Bills that you know, so, and so a lot of them, well, I shouldn't say a lot of them, a few of them, it was obvious what they were. Others, I said, oh, you know what, I think they're talking about this one, or I think they're talking about that one. One of the first things we did was we tried to identify each of those. And then we tried to pull out documents related to those. This has been an area where there's been some back and forth between the Department of Justice, between the District Attorney's Office, and you know, and as I said, the Law Department, the Police Department. You know, this is a big part of what we're doing. That is ongoing. Then that is not completed, but you know, where we've been able to identify, it appears they've all been dealt with the either internal investigating unit, where we're not sure. You know, I don't want to tell you that you know, that there's no issues, because there are, and we're still actively reviewing those. The efforts of the police department, of the law department, and now it's really time, and we're in the process of working with the DOJ, with the district attorney, and what comes out of that is still to be seen and to be determined, but it's by no means over.
So, okay, so the question was were there any internal investigations into officers that were identified? It sounds like the answer is yes, and it's also ongoing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say some of them there already were, you know, and they were able to identify it. As to what we do with going forward, that's the to be determined. Stay tuned.
Okay. Now, in terms of the officers that were implicated and identified in the Department of Justice report, I assume we can identify them in open session, but is that something that we can discuss in executive session and talk about? Are you able to share with the council what that discipline was in executive session, or even in open session?
To some extent, yes, but generally speaking, you know, unless an officer is there and is facing charges and has a right to, you know, be present and here's what's saying, no. And the executive session would not be an executive session if we were to bring outside people in because they had a right to hear what we're saying about them. So we will, you know, I know it sounds like I'm talking around it. I apologize, but we do need to be careful that we prevent any violations that could prevent any future prosecutions.
And I understand, and I don't, and I'm very, very respectful and cognizant of that. But I think, you know, as the legislative branch of the city, and because there were so many disturbing details in that report, I think it's important to all of us as counselors to know what resulted of that and what came of that. So there are a lot of unanswered questions that I think that we're entitled to know. The names of the officers, how many of them were identified, and what the discipline was. And so whatever process and whatever forum we're able to discuss that, I think is important, because again, you know, we're the legislative branch of the city, and we deserve those answers. I would like to know how many of those officers have been reassigned, and whether that reassignment was a result of discipline or part of the discipline, and how many of those officers have been promoted since the DOJ report or the incidents that were mentioned in the DOJ report. And so I can put these questions in writing to you, whether we can discuss them in executive session or an open session at another meeting. I would love to have those answers to those questions, and I think that the city council deserves those answers.
To the extent it involves public records, I'll be happy to give them to you. To the extent that that is not public information, you know, I apologize in advance that I won't be able to deliver on some of that.
So I have one question that I think that has been really lingering in my mind ever since I saw the DOJ report. And I'm going to ask it because I think you can answer this in open session. It's a very simple question. Have any of those officers been promoted?
Any of what officers?
Any of the officers that were implicated in the Department of Justice report, have they been promoted?
And what you know, let me say this. There are officers, there's, when you say implicated, you know, there's people just that filed reports. There's people that were, you know, accused of things. Some things are just he said, she said. So implication is going to be difficult to be a defining a point.
No, I appreciate that, Attorney Pikula, and you're getting technical on me. But I think you know where I'm headed with this. I'd like to know if there were any problem officers that were identified in this report that have been promoted since then. That's the question.
I will try to answer that as best I can when I receive your questions in writing.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and take questions and anything related to the DOJ report that we can answer in open forum, we'll do so. If not, then we'll reserve it for executive session. We'll start with Councilor Whitfield, who's a member of the committee, and then we'll go by hands in the chat. Councilor Whitfield.
Councilor Letterman cannot raise his hand, so I'll yield to him first.
Councilor Letterman.
Sure. I was gonna, it's not changing the topic, but it's not directly on the DOJ report. So if Councilor Whitfield has a DOJ report question, I'm probably more in order this time.
No, it was, mine was from before on the reform again. I just wanted to know when they implement the changes, how are the officers trained on the changes? According to the police reform, how are the officers trained of the update on the updates?
Okay, so after the reform bill came out in December, part of this act includes forming a post commission. The post commission was formed about April, I believe, of 2021. Since then, the MPTC has been working with Post to develop and implement new training for the officers. So right now, Post just came out with a de-escalation guideline on June 30th. That was just of this year. So right now, Post and the MPTC are still working together to come out with new training. So again, the commissioner mentioned with regard to like use of force, we updated our policy dated January 2021, and those things are happening, but we still will add whatever Post and the MPTC comes together to bring us.
And Counselor, I think what's going to happen is it looks like timing with summer vacations. It looks like some of these things will be decided in September, and the end of September is when the Springfield Police Department starts its 2022 in service. So that's when all the officers begin to be retrained for anything that's coming up in the 2022 curriculum of in-service training. I go to that in early October for 3 days to find out what they're going to require my officers to have for a curriculum. And then it's the Mass Chiefs of Police. We give them suggestions of what we want to see in the curriculum, and then it's instituted. I had to get everyone trained in 2021 in service by July 1. I had to get to be certified. The reform bill stated that to be certified, we had to get everybody done by July 1. Which was a little twist for us because we go into the fall usually. So instead of having in-service classes of 15, we had in-service classes of about 35. but we got it done to be certified. So that's probably the mechanism for training. The officers will probably come up as an in-service curriculum. Anything that they need to know in regards to any difference in the use of force or whatever, we will put out in an order and we will get the information to them immediately. But then it'll be reinforced in in-service training.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Thank you. I appreciate Ms. Crowell's present. I was wondering if she may be able to give us a brief update on her efforts around the accreditation and the policies and procedures. I know both the council and the mayor have been very supportive of the accreditation process, and that was a major recommendation by PERF around clarifying and updating all of the policies and procedures in the department. So Ms. Crowell certainly had quite the task ahead of her. So I'm just hoping we can get a brief update, and also in the future, perhaps dedicate a specific committee meeting to that effort. I know we probably won't be able to encompass all of it in just a couple of minutes, but to the extent that we could hear how that's going, I think it would be positive.
Sure. At this time, Deputy Chief Daniel is he's the lead on disseminating all the new policies and procedures we're enacting. As you know, these policies and procedures have not been updated thoroughly, probably since the 90s, maybe early 90s. We actually have several policies that we just updated as far as format and wording is concerned. We have new policies that all the captains over the units are looking at currently, probably about 88, 89 policies in a two-phase rollout. I'm looking to have a mock assessment by November of 2021. And this way, that'll give us time to implement any new thing post an MPTC comes up with. The mock assessment includes 3 or 4 already accredited police departments reviewing all of our policies. Right now, I'm still matching standards to what we have. And after the mock assessment, we reassess, take out, tweak whatever we have to tweak. And I'm really hoping that by April or May of 2022, we will have a real assessment and hopefully achieve certification. That's my goal.
That's excellent to hear. And one of the things that I appreciate about the certification and accreditation process is that it's living. I think we've talked a lot today about the changes that are coming to policing. I think those will be positive changes. I think they will be changes that will help us to rebuild trust as we continue to work through reform here in the city of Springfield. But I think that that's also happening elsewhere. And so the idea that we can be able to say that we reach that certification and eventually that accreditation, but know that several years from now, we're going to be continuing to compare policies and procedures with what other communities are doing, and all of the conversations and meetings that are happening there, all coming down to us as well, and vice versa. So I'm very glad to see your work, Ms. Crowell, and I appreciate you and your presence here today.
And also, just as an aside, since the reform bill, usually MPAC has about 30 requests for mock assessments like a year. They're getting 30 to 40 requests a month now. So they're actually adding an addendum to the 5th edition instead of rolling out the 6th edition. So there's changes coming from that pike also. So those are things that we are keeping abreast of, and we're making sure that we are going to meet all those certification standards to the best.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Allen or Councilor Edwards, do you have any questions before we close out?
This is Councilor Edwards. I just wanted to thank the commissioner and the staff for sharing with us. Appreciate the work you're doing, and look forward to hearing progress in the future. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, my counselor.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards, and I also want to thank Attorney Pikula, Ms. Crowell, and Commissioner Clapper for taking the time to meet with us. I think we had a very productive conversation. I'm very encouraged to hear that all 4 of the recommendations that were made by the Springfield City Council on June 8th or June 9th have 2020 have either been fully implemented or well on their way to being fully implemented. So that is great. I will mention, and I think it's worth mentioning because so that we can avoid a repeat of this in the future, that when this George Floyd incident occurred, I took it upon myself to put in the work and effort to do the research because I take my job seriously. I am the chairman of public safety, and this is a topic that I am very passionate about. And so I spent many hours and went to sleep very late researching, looking at best practices across the country. I contacted other police departments and other colleagues in government in other states to discuss best practices. And I put in a lot of time and effort into putting that 8-page report together. It's a little disappointing, I'm gonna be honest, that there hasn't been much communication between your department, Commissioner, and the City Council. As you know, prior to you accepting the position of Commissioner, I was Council President. I appointed a committee that was tasked with creating a way for there to be improvements in police-community relations. And that committee submitted a 57-page report both to the former commissioner and the mayor. That report was really, for the most part, as far as I know, completely ignored. And not blaming you because you weren't commissioner at the time. But it just goes to, it's just very disappointing when, a lot of people have put in time and effort into these things that we are very passionate about, and we would love to work together to coming out with a solution and implement changes. And there's very little communication. So earlier today, your department released an update of the changes that were made. I have been requesting that information for almost a year now, and I was disappointed to see that through the media rather than direct communication. The result of it, I'm very encouraged, and I'm very happy that we are on our way to creating change. But the process, I think that that there should be better communication. And so I want to continue to offer my support because I'm passionate about this issue. I am willing to put in the work to come up with whatever support you need from the City Council in order to implement police reform in the city. You can count on us, you can count on me, and I just want to encourage better communication moving forward.
Counselor, thank you, it's appreciated. And my apologies that the timing of the release, I had sat down with Brian Walsh last week and we went over some points in regards to a year from the DOJ report. We were prepared for the press to ask what's been done in a year, and I did not know the timing of that release. Actually, I thought this meeting would be before that, but it happened after that. So for that, I apologize. I do appreciate your support. I do appreciate the council's involvement, and I need your help. I do count on you, and I appreciate your support on the dirt bike and the ordinance and anything that you can do to continue to help us. Obviously, it's not gone away. It's still an issue. So I look forward to talking with you in regards to that. I have some other ideas, and I give you credit for coming forward with anything that can help me deter these illegal dirt bike riders who are now beginning to hurt people, interfere with traffic, and put people's lives at risk here. So I appreciate your involvement. I apologize for the timing of that press release. Like I said, it was done a week ago. I thought this was going to happen first. I also wanted to break to you the news that I am putting together a a firearms investigative unit before that press release, and it's kind of coming at the same time. I would like to let my public safety subcommittee know, and the other counselors know, that I have formed a firearms investigative unit. I have taken what was narcotics unit and formed them into the firearms investigative unit because of a couple reasons. First of all, gun crime and violent crime with guns in the city of Springfield is up 26%. We're not alone in that. That is countrywide, that firearms are an issue. We recovered about 10 illegal guns over a 4-day weekend. We had 7 to 8 people shot over the weekend due to gun violence. Gun violence is a problem in our city of Springfield. I wanted to address it. I took the narcotics unit, and they are going to be forming the firearms investigative unit to concentrate on gun crimes, on seizing illegal guns, on working with maybe you and our legislatures in regards to ghost guns and possible legislations about ghost guns. Massachusetts has no formal laws right now dealing with ghost guns. That's very concerning to me. You can order parts from the internet and make one, and they are making them stronger and better all the time. So I look forward to working with you on that. And that is part of the reasons for making narcotics right now firearms investigative unit. It is also because narcotics dealers are getting a little bit smarter and a little trickier, and they're involving multi-jurisdictions, and the investigations are taking months. It is much more suited for task force. So I'm making sure that I have people on all the task force with my partners, ATF, DEA, FBI, marshals, and state police. And the DA's office is with me on this. He's supportive. When we get information in regards to narcotics, I would like the task force to take over those investigations, time consuming, and we don't have jurisdiction problems. I can certainly help them with manpower when they are in Springfield. I would like to now concentrate on what I see as the big problem right now, and I'm sure all your constituents are going to come to you and complain about firearms. So I would like to tell you that in a week or two, I have to give narcotics unit time to finish up the investigations they're doing, complete them. But I will tell you that this afternoon, that newly formed firearms investigations unit seized an illegal handgun, and the gentleman had his finger on the trigger. No one was hurt, no one was injured. He was arrested and the firearm was seized. So we're starting to work on that. I look forward to working on that with you. And I look forward to closer communication, not through the newspaper, but directly with the Public Safety Committee or with the City Council themselves. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for all of your efforts and everything that you do for the city of Springfield. I think it's very obvious, from the conversation that we had today, that we all want the same thing. We all have the same common goal, which is to have the best Springfield Police Department that we can have for the residents of the city of Springfield. And so, I think that we can get there together, working together. And some of the things that you mentioned earlier are key. And I wish that, because we have some members of the media here, I hope that moving forward that we can, that will be what is highlighted and what is the focus of what is being reported to the public, because we're making a lot of good progress. And we will continue to make good progress if we work together. So, when you mentioned that a lot of the conversations that we had earlier today, based on our recommendations, that wasn't what was reported in the media. So we want to continue to push that message that we are making progress together. So
absolutely, and I appreciate all the time you put into that letter. I kept it, I have it, and I refer to it, and that was our goal. So don't think that your efforts went unnoticed or went to waste or I dismissed them. That is certainly not the case.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. And thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be in touch in terms of the next executive session for the Public Safety Subcommittee. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Good night. Thank you.